One of the key things we have to remember is where the public are at the moment in terms of their feelings on public service. And if we cast our mind over the last 12 months, there's been a lot of changes. We've seen the credit crunch with all of the banking crisis that followed. And whilst for some people with interest rates low, that's meant a reduction in the expenditure. For many of our most vulnerable clients, that's the elderly particularly, they've actually had very high inflation because the sort of goods and services they buy actually aren't affected by the interest rate. They actually are high, and therefore they have had some tough times. And so that, combined with perhaps the expenses and other issues that have brought around perhaps a failure of trust in the public, means there's greater scrutiny on what we do now than we've ever had before. So not only is there need to be open and transparent about what we spend and how we spend it, we need to make sure that the services we deliver are transparent and simple to use as well. And that's what Total Place really is about.
Well, Total Place has been a big success in the 13 pilots, but we now are into the big sell. We've got a new government, we haven't got much time, but we need to sell its concepts, and we need to do that really before the budget statement in the autumn.
We've been working very closely in a Total Place way with the Primary Care Trust, and that's been one of our major thrusts and partnerships. Working with them very, very closely, we have a joint chief executive, joint management team, and bringing together many of the shared services and working in one building and generally creating an ethos of one organisation. We're on a journey in that process, but that's been very much very influential in the improvement of the services that we have given to our population, both as an NHS and as a council.
The fact that we share responsibility works extremely well. Residents, tenants, or whoever lives in the area just ask for something to happen and they're not redirected from one place to another. And services are shared from one location, and it means that there's less overlapping of services and actually fewer people needed to do the same job in the area.
In Wakefield, we're trying to bring together voluntary organisations with the NHS and the local authority to make sure that services have been provided for people who are alcohol abuse or alcohol misuse, are provided in the best and most effective way, most efficient, reduce duplication, and get in touch with service users or even young people who aren't yet service users to try and introduce the prevention agenda. So I think for our organisation it's facilitating that communication.
In the South East is a really good example of what Total Place means. There were 3 strands, but the one strand in particular was how, through a thing called the Kent Gateway, which is a high street retail outlet for public service, all of the public services in the area were integrated. There's over 30 public services, not just publicly owned, but voluntary sector as well. So the customer comes in and has a single point of contact to access services around the problems that they have, not about the way that we want to deliver the services. And really that's the essence at the front of the shop. What that's led to actually is an integration behind the scenes that the customer doesn't have to see and doesn't have to care about, which has led to incredible savings. So efficiency and improvements in service for the customer, reductions in costs for the public service.
Getting into communities, finding out who those community movers and shakers are, and really making sure that the local councillor knows their role and develops their role better as the community champion, and get people to think differently about how services are being delivered on the ground.
I see councillors as being the real drivers for Total Place, because my experience, and I've been on the council for 16 years, is that when councillors get involved in something, it seems to drive the agenda much faster.
As a councillor in Bradford, I think unless the councillors themselves are committed to what's been proposed for Total Place, it's not going to happen, because in the end they're the people who make the decisions about how the money's spent and about what services are provided, and without the lead from the councillors it just can't happen. It's really important But of course for councillors it's in our interests to do that.
Councillors have got a huge role to play. I mean, there are ambassadors, if you like, in the whole project. So they'll have to move their councils. There have been a large number of voluntary total place projects, not in the official pilots. We'll need those councillors to push forward and, as I say, really make this programme work.
The costs of social care and the cost of waste are going to double, even if we get the unit price lower. So we have to find new ways of working. The old model of service delivery won't work, and the best way to do that is to get the customer to take control themselves. So there are a number of initiatives whereby, and social care is a great example of this, you're actually giving the customer the power to actually sort their own services out. And that's not in a way leaving them abandoned to do that, but giving them the tools and the information to sort out what's best for them. And that might give them a whole range of choices that they've previously not had in traditional public services.
In reaching the hearts of Herefordshire, I think what we've clearly learnt there is that our officers have had to think a little bit more clearly about what the impact on the ground is this. I think you can spend an awful lot of time in County Hall or in the Shire Hall, in the Town Hall, knowing you're delivering services, but you really do need to focus what this means to somebody actually in the street, up the country lane. How is this actually going to impact on them?
Once you dismantle the barriers and you take away from people their set job descriptions and give them a larger job description that says, we want to work for the benefit of the residents who live here, which actually might be your mum or your auntie or a relative of yours, then it works much more effectively. People aren't precious about who they work for and their job, and you're doing my job, or don't ask me to do that because that's not my job. You have a total approach to something which leads to much higher levels of resident satisfaction.
What we've learnt so far is that you can do things to integrate public services at the front of the house, but also that you can merge at the back of the house. And in the most extreme example, we've actually taken two authorities and merged them together completely. Now, that has proved excellent for value for residents in that area, and actually hasn't really been seen, if you like. It's just reduced the cost. The thing that we've learned from that is that actually there are skills and capacities that local government needs to change, and they're not very common. You need to be able to go into an authority and to help it change its business processes, and not just for the sake of it, but to reduce the overall cost and increase the efficiency of the process. That skill is very rare. It's very highly costed in the market, so actually local government needs to start to build those skills in-house. So the team that went and merged the authorities also goes in and trains authorities on how to do that themselves. So we're gradually building up the capacity, but that's probably the thing that we need for the future.
The challenges for Total Place in the future, I think the uncertainty of the coalition government, and my party's part of that government, but again, I think when you get change of government, there's always that uncertainty. The convincing of people that it has been a success, or the concept is a success. So people want the template, they want, how do I make it work in my area? Oh, well, we don't deal with offenders in my little district, so it's of no interest to me. So what do I need? And it's the challenges is to say to people, no, you've got to make it work for yourself in your own way. And that just go out and do it. Don't wait for the chief executive to say, we are now working in a Total Place environment. Just go and do it, start it. There's not necessarily changes in legislation or a law or standing orders of the council that need you to think a little bit differently about how you do some basic service delivery.